Welcome to the Chief Aim podcast. This is your weekly dose of real experiences, insights, strategies, and action steps for entrepreneurs who want to build and are building something incredible. Welcome back to the show. I am Jason Graystone.
And I'm Seb Bates.
And we're back again. And we've been getting a lot of feedback on the Chief Aim podcast. I've had people go, I listened to the podcast on this and I wrote these notes, and it seems that everyone's getting a lot of value from the discussions. And one of the things that people have been saying is how transparently we're enjoying doing these as well. Like we're having fun making these things, and that's been awesome because we really are. I look forward to these chats. So this is another one, and we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship and why you shouldn't be one, in the voice of Rob Moore. And
I'm not sure I can pull that off, but
but look, the reality is, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, and the people that do think that they want to be entrepreneurs usually go into it and realize that it's not quite something that sits inside their comfort and capabilities, and what they then do is try to escape it by burying their head in the sand and doing other things, and it's not conducive to the goal of what your role of an entrepreneur is, and that is to create a business that works, and that's it. So, Seb, why are we talking about this stuff?
yeah, like every episode, you message me or I message you, and I say, look, this thing's been grinding my gears for the last week. Let's just talk about this, and that's pretty much what this is, right, guys? This is literally just us having a chat about things that have been plaguing our minds, or we've been trying to process, or conversations we might have had together, and we actually think, let's just not talk about it. Let's just film it instead. So entrepreneurship is one of those things.
The chief rant.
The chief rant. That's what we should have called it. Yeah. The chief aim is to rant on here. So the point here is entrepreneurship has really been glamorized a lot in social media, and I think that it's over glamorized. I think that a lot of people are looking to become entrepreneurs because of what they see in social media. And they have this concept that if they become an entrepreneur, they'll have more freedom, they'll have more fun, they'll have more time, more flexibility. That is their goal with entrepreneurship. But they also think that as part of that, they'll also be able to have a luxury lifestyle, get the car they've always wanted, get the house, get the holidays, get the thing. And from my perspective, I would say everyone goes to entrepreneurship thinking they've got a number in their head of what they think they should be earning in order to be happy, in order to feel secure, and in order to have that freedom, right? So they've got a rough idea of the number. But here's the reality. I would say for about 80% of people that actually go through it, they don't achieve that number. But the 20% that do, when they get there, they're not satisfied. And that's a part of that is because they're quite ambitious people in the first place, right? To get through all of that grind to become a successful entrepreneur where you reach that figure, you have to overcome so much. And statistically, most businesses finish in the first year. So if you're part of that top 20% who make it and you get that first number, I guarantee it won't be enough. And for those people, they want typically double. There was a really interesting study which looked at people who became millionaires, and they were asked, why don't you stop now? What do you want next? They were like, I'll feel a bit more secure and happy when I got 2 million. They asked people with 2 million what they said, and they said 4 million. People with 4 million said 8 million, and so on. And so there's a reality here that you typically want twice as much as you currently got as a benchmark, right? So now you imagine those 100 people become entrepreneurs, or they feel they're going into entrepreneurship. 20 of them reach the target, the financial target they're looking for. Now, they're not fulfilled because they're still seeking twice as much as they've got. So then they set a new number, right? And for some people, they keep going through this process. But I've met lots of entrepreneurs who are fulfilled. And I've got a whole kind of philosophy around this, if you like. I think out of those 20 that go through, you can split that again 80-20. 80% keep going through this cycle, right, of wanting more, not being happy, not being satisfied, wanting more, and then ending up in the same place. Maybe they get the next goal, but then they want more. They get the next goal, and they want more, and so on. But 20% realize there's more to entrepreneurship than just the selfish gain of reaching that next financial target. And here's where it becomes really, really interesting. If I had to define entrepreneurship in one statement, it would be exploring my potential as a human being to serve mankind and solve problems out there in the world. That is it, right? And so for me, I really believe that entrepreneurs, they are going to solve the biggest problems that we face as a species out there. If you look at entrepreneurs, right, they're typically passionate about the unique thing that they're really interested in. They can move very, very quickly. They're very, very creative, and they can summon people. They can bring people around through a brilliant pitch, right? And they can implement quickly. You compare that to a lot of governments out there who've got a short-term agenda, typically, and it's vastly different. Who's more likely to solve the problems? It's the entrepreneurs. So I think the approach here, before I go on, this becomes a 20-minute rant of me talking about entrepreneurship. I think to close off on that part of this, I think the way to look at this is you get into entrepreneurship to solve the problem of personal wealth. Once you've achieved that, you're then able to see that you're able to solve bigger problems. And I think the key here is looking at what you do in the world, not just selfishly, but what big problems can you solve out there in order to reach your full potential as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I use an example because a lot of people get overwhelmed with the whole idea of entrepreneurship and starting a business and stuff. And I say, look, it is just solving problems. And I said, imagine you go to an island and you're shipped off to a desert island and, there's, 50 of each gender. There's only 2 genders in this instance, but there's 50 women, 50 men, and you've got no money, and it is just barter system, right? And you're all there equally, and you've got to then start earning money, so through bartering or goods and products and things like that for exchange of fairness. And what do? You sit there and you look at all the problems that people have got. It's only 500 people, right? 499 people. And you start looking at what they're struggling with, who's doing what, who's weak at doing what, who's going out and getting all the, building all the houses and stuff. And you start looking at problems and you start asking yourself, well, how can I create something, service or product to help them with that so that they could potentially give me something that I need? And that is all entrepreneurship is, but on a larger scale. It's like we are on a desert island. It's called Earth. And there's 8 billion people, but it's essentially the same thing. You're just solving a problem for someone. And as a byproduct of that, they are giving you something that you need to enhance your life, whether that's cash or another service that's going to, a good for good exchange. So that at the basic level is entrepreneurship, basically leveraging a skill and solving a problem and then growing that by getting other people on board with helping you solve that problem and serving more people. That's basically it. So anyone can do that, essentially. So it's not like, can anyone be an entrepreneur? Anyone can actually go and do that. Anyone can choose to go and serve people in a way that's beneficial, right? The struggle, I think, is when people have to go and that they go on to become an entrepreneur, like you say, because it's glamorized, and then they feel like it should provide them with this kind of spiritual, balanced life that's perfect just because they've put an entrepreneur in their title, in their bio, and now everything should be okay. But in actual fact, there's a lot of work to do. So just me, using an analogy of a desert island to solve someone's problems is very different to staying up late and not sleeping to create a product because you're so worried about paying the bills or whatever, to then put it into the world and actually test it and then get crucified for it on feedback and horrible feedback and someone saying it's rubbish and someone slating you and your family not supporting you and all this kind of stuff. It's very, very different. So what people tend to do then is start to go, I'm going to do a bit of charity work and I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it look like it's all good. I'm doing good things. When in actual fact, what you need to be doing is putting more work into making the product better to help people. And a lot of people don't. I don't know if it's because they don't think it should be like that, or they should be feeling those feelings of pain because they feel like other people aren't doing it because of how it's, you only see the highlight reel of other people on
this is Instagram. I think people have a worse head start than they realize, right? It's like if you look at where people get their understanding of what entrepreneurship is, it's from social media. When I grew up, I grew up in Somerset pretty much for most of my young life. I'd never met an entrepreneur, apart from a sole trader at a post office. And there's a very distinct difference between a sole trader and an entrepreneur. Let's just say you've been working in the same business for 20 years, you leave and you've got lots of clients from that business who follow you. You don't need to do anything particularly creative. You're set up, you're ready to go. That's an example of a sole trader. It's just them they're hiring. They're not revolutionizing or creating or innovating brand new products and experiences and services. They're doing the same thing that they've done when they were employed. It's a classic example of a sole trader. And when you look at entrepreneurship, and again, I look back at my own childhood, not really meeting an entrepreneur who's solving big problems out there in the world. So that person who was running the post office, as an example, as a sole trader, they weren't an entrepreneur in my eyes, right? Because they weren't solving anything complex or growing what they were doing. They were taking over something, getting paid a salary from the business that they were owning, and it was very much a sole trader relationship they had with that entity. And so I grew up without any of the social media around entrepreneurship. When I was growing up, there wasn't really like, entrepreneurship is cool because you can drive a Lambo and all this sort of stuff and become financially free. There was none of that. I grew up in a family where both my parents were, working government jobs, army, NHS. Around me, there were no entrepreneurs. I didn't really meet entrepreneurs until I was sort of mid-20s, right? So then when I went traveling, I was about 19 years old. I was a college, uni dropout, went traveling, and I ran out of money. And so I ran out of money while I was traveling, but I wanted to carry on traveling so I could carry on the adventure. So I started picking up random jobs, right? And these weren't normal jobs where someone says, do you want a job? I can pay you this much per hour. This is where I would come up with a solution to an idea, to a problem I had seen out there. And then I would negotiate myself the value of solving that problem. So an example of that would be, I used to, when I was working in Vietnam at different hotels, I would travel from city to city on a motorbike, which I bought. And I would go to a hotel and say, look, I haven't got any money to stay the night. But what I can do is I can go to the bus stop and come back with 5 tourists. And they were like, great, that will get you 2 nights here and food. Cool, job done. Next hotel, I would do the same thing. I go to the docks. I go to the full moon parties in Thailand and rent out 5 bungalows. And then, find tourists who are willing to pay a bit more, 20% more, whatever, and I can have the difference. Plus, I get free accommodation by doing that outreach for them. Just random examples like that. And what I didn't realize I was at that time was an entrepreneur. I just thought I was just, managing to haggle my way into extending my holiday, right?
Yeah.
It carried on like this for about a year. And ultimately, that is black and white entrepreneurship. I just didn't realize it because no one ever told me. I didn't see social media explaining anything. There were no YouTube shorts or reels back in those days. I had a Nokia 3310. So, that was the reality there. And I think people have such a different experience now because it's really shoved down their throat that if you've got a job, you're not free. If you've got a job and you're working for someone else, you shouldn't be happy. You need to be out there doing your own thing. And for a lot of people, it is so against the grain to become an entrepreneur and solve problems out there because you really have to get yourself out there. You have to really be in the trenches. You have to, for a long time, be, working for less than minimum wage and probably 100 hours plus, a week. This is the reality of entrepreneurship. You would have been much happier in a job. And a lot of people I'm now seeing are looking at entrepreneurship like, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, and that's going to give me work-life balance. And I'd love your thoughts on this, Jason, because I look at the last 10 plus years of building my business, and I think it's only in the last couple of years that I've now been in a position where I'm actually able to have work-life balance, right? And it's like I can now choose how much work I do, or I can choose this, or I can choose that. But that's after a decade of working super long hours, loads of financial risk, loads of personal risk, loads of emotions up and down before I'm able to be the level of entrepreneur where I can just watch those emotions rather than be super involved, right? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's just purely from my own experience that I now feel other people should go through that? Or do you think that's the reality of entrepreneurship?
This is a quick shout out to the sponsor of this show, Shield, who help us deliver this podcast along with all the social media that goes with it to help us get it out to more people, which leaves us to focus on just creating more great conversations. If you want to start, delegate or optimize your social media or podcast, or if you want to build your very own online course or program, get in touch with the team at shieldglobal.io. Funnily enough, my own story is very similar. I was told that I was the first time I was ever told that I was an entrepreneur, where I thought I'm an entrepreneur, was only like 2015 by my accountant. He said, "You're very entrepreneurial," and by that time I'd had a business and all that, but I just didn't know what it was, right? And I said, "Why am I entrepreneurial?" And he said, "Because you're influential and you're able to get people, you're able to come up with ideas to innovate different things and actually implement it." And I thought, oh, right, that's an entrepreneur. And literally that was like not even 10 years ago. And I was called an entrepreneur as a byproduct of being an entrepreneur. It's not me trying to be an entrepreneur, which I think is the difference. It's like, I want that title, so I'm going to work to be one, as opposed to I'm actually doing the things, so I'm titled one. And that's the difference, right? You just have to solve the problems and then get other people on board to help you solve those problems, and you're an entrepreneur, right? That's basically it.
I love the two words you said there, right? Influence and innovate. Like those are the two key words to be an entrepreneur. You've got to influence people, i.e. the team around you to attract talented people to help you with your ideas. And also to influence the customer in order for them to sell, to sell to them, yeah. And then you've got to innovate. So you've got to come up with something new. A new way could be even just a new way of explaining something, a new way of pitching something, which is obviously marketing and sales, or a new product or service, a new way of bundling something together, a new way of branding something, and I think it's the combination of those two things, right? Influence and innovate, which creates entrepreneurship, which then brings it to entrepreneur. Nature or nurture. I don't think it's as black and white as that. I think you can learn entrepreneurial skills, but to become in the top kind of 20% that I mentioned, I think that you need an element of this is in your core. This is kind of what you feel like your life's purpose is. And more, I look at entrepreneurship just like a career. I look at it like, I saw your post the other day, right, which was brilliant post. People don't retire. Sorry?
Oh, okay, yeah. The only people that retire are people that work for money.
Exactly. The only people that retire are the people that work for money. And I was interviewed by the national paper the other day here in UAE for an article called Money and Me, and they said, when are you going to retire? What's your plans for retirement? And I was just thinking, well, what does that mean? The thought doesn't even really cross my mind. I mean, do they mean exit my business? Well, I think everyone's got an exit strategy. Whether or not you actually do it, I don't know, but it's like, what would I do for the rest of my life? I'm 33. Am I going to retire at 40 and play golf for 40 years? Like, I'll be on the golf course and I'll be finding problems and I'll be building products and solutions. Do you know what I mean? I think for a lot of people, this is just how they live their life. And I think for those people, it's actually quite calming. You find a sense of calm in the storm when you zoom out and approach your life like that, right? It's like there's less pressure on making sure the thing you're doing succeeds, and you're more kind of just enjoying the journey of entrepreneurship. But I do think that for some people, they fall into this trap of believing that they can just jump into the lifestyle of an entrepreneur, and then they realize, oh my God, no one's buying my stuff. This is really difficult. I've got to slog away for hours and hours and hours to do this. I wasn't expecting this. I've got a wife and kids, or a husband and kids. I was expecting to have more time. I thought that was the case. Or on the other hand, they start burning through their savings because they enjoy the life too quickly and expect it to go well without actually putting in the hard work themselves, right? And a year or two down the line, it hasn't quite worked, and they're in that situation again.
I think nurture nature thing. I think yes, anyone, as I say, anyone can be an entrepreneur by solving problems, but actually the influence part where you have to make the sales and actually cope with the rejections and all the rest of it, that's something that it's not even like it needs to be learned. It needs to be just endured, and you need to like go through this growth spurt of emotional mastery, right? It's like you need the pressure there. Look, when we've done a whole episode on pressure, but you need this pressure there to then kind of, I don't know, dissolve any kind of emotion that you have around taking it personally and things like that, and you have to see it very objectively for what it is, and then you have to be able to move on, and that's the bit that I think people struggle with. And then because they feel like it's been sold to them, this idea that entrepreneurship gives them that life that you just mentioned. They then beat themselves up about not being good at entrepreneurship. So instead of doing the things that they should be doing to make it better, they then do anything else other than that so that they can't be compared or scored or graded or, measured against anyone else, because they're not actually doing the same as what the other entrepreneurs are doing.
Why isn't your business successful? Why isn't your business making sales? Oh, well, that's because I've been focusing
I've been doing charity
this
work. Yeah. I've been doing this, that, and the other. And,
did we speak about anything but sales and the sales?
We did, yeah.
We did, yeah. Yeah, that's a great episode, by the way. If anyone's listening to this and they want to have a deep dive on sales, check out that episode. Sales. What do we call it? Just sales.
It's called Sales in Business. Yeah, how to sell.
You kept that one simple. There was no verses there. Sales versus no sales.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a versus one. But no. Look, when I put out that post on social media about the only people that retire are the people that work for money, again, that is not like a good and bad statement. I had people defending, oh well, I'm this or I'm that. Well, it wasn't meant for that. It was just a statement to say, understand this, that people who don't retire are the ones that are working for much more than money. Money's the byproduct, whereas the people that retire are people that want to get away from what they're doing. So they want an end date to what they're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that you're in a job where you are going to the job to get money, to have the life that you want. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's the difference between the approaches. One's entrepreneurial and one isn't. And it's okay to be either. And I guess that's really the message for this. That's the message for this episode, right? It's like not everyone is and not everyone has to be. And it's okay to just have the life that you want.
Yeah, and I mean, if you had to bullet point it, right? Why? I mean, sometimes it's good to ask a question to a question. Why entrepreneur? Why you shouldn't be one? Well, if you've got a false concept of what entrepreneurship is from social media, entrepreneurship, go into it thinking you're going to be 10 years in the trenches, right? And out you'll pop the other side with that number if that's what you're going for. What's another reason why someone shouldn't be an entrepreneur?
If you don't actually have the skills to innovate and influence,
How do you know that until you've tried?
If you can't, well, that's a good point. But if you don't like speaking to people, if you don't like, if you're not vocal, if you don't share opinions, if you're not contrarian, if you're not clear-headed where you want to go directionally, if you can't take criticism. If you're not very decisive and you can make quick decisions, if you're not good under pressure, all of those things can be worked on, but you're not quite ready to be an entrepreneur. That I would, okay, you can go and do it, but I would say hold off a little bit until you've mastered that, because otherwise you'll be really in the thick of it and you'll struggle. So I'm not saying you can't be, I'm just saying there's things that you can work on before you're ready to go and do that. Because 5 to 10 years in the trenches of really hard work, late nights, rejections, all that kind of stuff. I know you hear it on the motivational videos, but it's true. It really is true. And
can I just jump in there? Can I just jump in there as well and just say, if you're really an entrepreneur, you'll spend 10 years in the trenches and you'll bloody love it. You'll love every second of it, and you'll look back and be like, that was the good old days.
Yeah,
I don't want to paint a bad picture of it, but that's the reality.
No, it's the best times.
I look back at the times. You remember the pizza and beer story, right?
Yeah.
I've had the reverse of that, where I've come back from a day where I've made no sales, had a million rejections. I've looked in the fridge, there's an old bit of leftover pizza, half a beer, and I've sat down on the sofa and been like, I've got nothing. In fact, I'm in loads of debt. I've got nothing. I've got no hope. There's no social proof that says I'm going to succeed in this at all. But I'm loving the adventure. And I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to smash it. And I think that's the reverse of the pizza and movie situation. And the guy in that story, right, he sells his business for $500 million, and he ends up grabbing a pizza and grabbing a beer, and then he's lost because he's completed his life's work. I imagine at the beginning of his journey, he was sitting on the sofa with a beer and a pizza and the same thing, right? And it's kind of a nice little message about life, right? You go into this world with nothing and you leave with nothing, and that's the reality. And I think that the focus, therefore, should be on the journey, and you should enjoy, the way I see it is just exploring my full potential as a human being. And I'm doing that through entrepreneurship, right? I used to think I was doing that through extreme sports. I thought by pushing forward human flight and seeing what my body could do, I was exploring my full potential. But that's got a very short-lived kind of capacity to it, right? With entrepreneurship, and it's very selfish. With entrepreneurship, you're able to do that, but also impact millions of lives if you're good at it. And so I think it's a beautiful concept, really, to use entrepreneurship to explore your full potential. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do something you love, be fulfilled, be rewarded enough so that you can do the things that you want in life. And if you've got that at any stage of your life, you've cracked it, right? Don't beat yourself up too much about it, and be just be someone who you want to be, rather than looking up to what you should or shouldn't be on social media. There are lots of perks to entrepreneurship, of course, but it's not. It's pretty straight after the 100th mile. That's where it starts to level off and become. You can start reaping the rewards.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So look, that's a really good episode, I think. Let us know in the comments some of the horror stories that you've had. But as Seb says, it's always those ones you're going to look back on your deathbed and just like smile on your face. All the tough times that you overcame, all that kind of stuff. You're not going to remember sitting on a beach with a cocktail. It'll be like a nice grin.
No one cares. You don't care. No one cares. No one cares about the Ferrari you're going to buy. That like all this. All they care about. When you sit around with a bunch of people who have got tens of millions of pounds, they're sitting there and they're like, "Oh, Jason, do you remember that time where you had nothing and then you came home and didn't make any sales and it was the worst day of your life? And then the next day, you hurt yourself, you break your arm, and then you somehow managed to pull off that month. God, wasn't that incredible? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's those stories where, you were just in the thick of the adventure of entrepreneurship that actually mean the most to you as a person. And for me, this is why, exploring the world and traveling is something which I have such a high priority on, more than material things, because material things, they come and go, but those experiences, those adventures are really what give you such a fulfilling life and give you a list of stories, right?
I remember back in the day, just quickly, I was working in Jersey for Deutsche Bank, and man, we had to work nights, and there was a horrendous consultant who was really strict, checking all the work, and my stomach, like, I had to go there pretty much every week, and my stomach would drop at the thought of going there. It was like, I thought that I was in hell at the time, right? Now I look back, and that's one of my fondest memories of going over there and like doing that task. It's just crazy. So
isn't that amazing?
It's just amazing. Yeah, amazing. Yeah,
it's crazy to think when you look back, the things that you thought, this is horrible, I hate this, I can't wait until I'm over this, I'm successful. But arguably, you only look back and enjoy those moments because you're through it, right? Yeah. It's kind of what I call type 2 fun. If you know my theory on type 1 and type 2 fun, you ask my wife and I'm like, let's just do this because it'd be more type 2 fun with the arduous, painful, difficult thing, and then you enjoy it later. Like a tough workout, right? You don't really necessarily enjoy doing hill sprints at the time. It can be pretty gopping, but afterwards you feel great the rest of the day, and the rest of the month you feel good because you've done it and your discipline's high, and you feel proud of yourself for completing it and all this sort of stuff. It's the same with entrepreneurship. The same with the difficult things that you go through, right?
Totally. Amazing. Well, let us know if you're enjoying this podcast in the comments. Let us know some of your horror stories, as I say, and some of the struggles and hurdles that you're facing right now. We can bring those up as topics. We can discuss those. We're always looking to discuss meaningful topics that people are actually connecting with and relating to. So please let us do that. And until next week, or next episode, I should say, have a good day, and we'll see you then. If you're enjoying these podcasts, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're really getting value from these, we'd really love it if you could let us know on our review page. We'll see you next week.